Hello, everybody. So we're going to start this talk a little bit different. I appreciate this room is quite hot, so hopefully this doesn't send anyone to sleep. But I'm actually going to get you all to close your eyes for the start of this, please. I want you to, in your heads, imagine your ideal, perfect start to your working day. Perhaps it's waking up to the sound of the birds, grabbing a breakfast at your own pace, and walking through the park on the way to take your kid to school. You take your dog out, you grab a coffee on your way back to your home office to sit down at your computer and start your day. Unfortunately, this will stop in a second. The reality of this is, you wake up 7 o'clock, you've overslept, your alarm's been ringing, you've had a tired night, you woke up at 4 in the morning to deal with an on-call incident. You've got 29 unread emails already, and you're already running late. You jump in the car, you take your kid to school, you sit in traffic on your way into the office, and you realize you might not make it. You make it just by the skin of your teeth into the office to join your team's daily stand-up, where you say, "No updates from me." You then head into your open plan office to sit at your uncomfortable desk where the equipment doesn't all quite work. You get to join meetings with your boss, who explains how it's so important to to be back in the office with the whole team for the company culture. And this is the company culture, standing around a water cooler. Who has a water cooler at home? Nobody. So, today we're going to talk about leading successful remote teams, specifically remote teams. But actually these words probably apply to any kind of company or team you're working in. So, I'm Callum. I'm a .NET developer by trade, a Microsoft MVP and a Braco MVP, very good open source Danish CMS if you haven't heard of it. I run a company based out of the UK and most recently Australia. So we're a fully, truly distributed team. This is a pretty different talk for me. I usually do a technical talk, and this is, unfamiliar territory. I'm going to be sharing some stories from my own career and some of my personal tips and experience. Your mileage may vary. This is a topic that evokes a lot of discussion with people, so please come up afterwards. Let's chat. I'm here for the rest of the week. It would be great. I'm actually based in Sydney now, and I'm fully aware of the irony of me traveling 10,000 miles to come talk to you about remote teams, but it is really lovely to see you all here. Okay, let's talk about my journey. So I started working in remote-first teams in 2013, so a little bit over a decade ago. And I joined a team in 2015 that was also a kind of distributed company. So in 2013, the company I was working in had a couple of people working remotely, and that was a fairly new thing back then. They'd be working from home. So our lead developer at the time, they moved to Ireland and was working with our team in a kind of disconnected fashion. And it was super interesting because the company wasn't geared up or really arranged for that. It meant that communication was harder. You couldn't see when people were going to be away from their desk. It meant scheduling meetings was a bit challenging. Back in 2013, even our video and voice calling things were not amazing. Like I think Google Hangouts was a thing, but it just wasn't very good at the time. And so, it was difficult. It was difficult. 2015, as I say, I moved to London and I joined a company that I was really excited about. They had an office in London and they had people who worked from home around the UK, but also in Europe. So they had an office in Poland as well. It was an exciting prospect to join this team, mostly for the culture. In the space I've been working in, this company was renowned as being like a company that contributed a lot back to the open source community, was renowned for some of the quality of the work that they did, and the people who worked for that company, again, were equally as renowned in the community. So for me, that was a really exciting prospect. I get to join this company. I came to the office and I got to meet the team before I accepted the job offer, and it was this buzzing hive of activity with all these people I really respected and looked up to. So I joined, and I came on board as effectively a consultant. I was a developer building .NET applications by day, and I was also working with them on building some exciting projects like doing some site reliability for some gambling companies, building membership systems at a huge scale, tens of millions of members, and also building a microservice system for like a medical startup at one point as well. So that was really fun. Unfortunately, as time moved on, I realized this wasn't quite the idealistic picture that I'd had painted in my head. There was a big disconnect between the teams. So despite having a remote setup, we had people who were based in Poland who would start at 7 in the morning, their time, which is 6 in the morning UK time. And the UK team would start somewhere between 9:30 and 10 a.m., meaning the team in Poland had completed half of their working day before we even started. Our daily stand-ups happened at 10 in the morning UK time. That's 11 in the morning in Poland, just as they're prepping to go off for lunch. That's really not ideal. So there was already this communication barrier there, where it felt like the teams were separated. Similarly, some of us would work until 6 p.m., maybe later, in London, but in Poland, they'd clock off at 3 because they started at 7, and that's perfectly understandable. So the company had created this culture where that was an okay thing to do, but without really considering how that might apply to the teams and the way we were going to work together. One of the solutions that was put forward by a nameless smart colleague was to introduce some of these cameras. We're going to have webcams, effectively, or internet security cameras set up in each office, where we can have a TV in each office that has a constant live feed of the other office. So you can see when people are at the desks. And yes, it's not quite the same as talking, but it helps break down some of these barriers that are created by distance. What an amazing idea. Well, if you ever use these, firstly, you'll know the quality's terrible. Secondly, they break all the flipping time. And thirdly, it was actually a bit creepy. Someone could go on and you could control and move the camera around to check if someone's at their desk, and it sort of felt like you were being spied on. It's not really the solution to bringing two disparate remote teams together. That was, an interesting way of working. We ended up spending hours and hours each week on ceremony, on meetings. Our 15-minute daily stand-up ended up dragging out to 45 to an hour because communication between the teams was so poor, and people were asking questions about, why are we doing things a certain way? Process literally became a burden. There was constant, I'll call it intellectual sparring with managers or people in these teams, people who would swoop in and go, we don't do it like that. It's like, okay, but let's maybe have a conversation about why. You had people from different cultures who, ignoring cultural differences, had different experiences in the work that they did. Some in Poland were coming from more of a financial services background, whilst us in the UK were majority coming from like a web development and an agency background, where you had people who wanted to build these highly robust, really scalable solutions, and others who were just like, we'll hack something together and make it work. And without good communication, that just didn't really click. It constantly felt like we were pushing like water up a hill, spinning a hamster wheel, and the faster you ran and the more work you did, the more it moved underneath you. And it became very stressful, and it's a surefire way to lead to burnout. So effectively, this is kind of what happened to me. I worked hard, long hours, with all of these pressures, meaning that it was quite difficult to do work or do work that felt valuable to me, where you're fighting with people, you can't really get answers out of people, it doesn't feel like you've got a team there that supports you or that you can support. I didn't really notice it, actually, at the time. But looking back, I can look at pictures of myself, and I gained a lot of weight over like the 3 years or 4 years I worked at the company. Not saying that's entirely the company's fault. But the thing that actually really struck the nerve for me was when I went to a family holiday, and my own mother turned to me and said, "You look unwell, grey, almost dead." This was a bit of a wake-up call. I know parents like to pick on you sometimes, but yeah, this was perhaps a little bit more serious. Work was taking a big toll on me, and I realized this company that I'd dreamed of working at really actually wasn't quite for me. So I left, and I said, I'm never going to work in another software team ever again. I left around in December, around Christmas time. And it was funny because for about a year prior, I hadn't worked on any open source software or done any projects that I really felt passionate about. And within 3 days of leaving this company, I found myself picking up a laptop with the urge to contribute to something, to do something off my own back for the first time in the longest time. Simply the act of leaving took all of that weight off my shoulders. I appreciate that's a very privileged position to have been in, but it was truly eye-opening for me. So after that, I sort of tried to work out what I was going to do next. I took some time out, we did some traveling, and I did decide I really missed working, building software, and I did like building software. It was just the environment that I'd been building it in that I didn't enjoy. So I set about trying to work out how I could make this work. So I decided to start my own company. I went off kind of on my own at first, building up my own consultancy, doing some work for other people, and soon realized that there was quite a lot of work coming my way, and it's hard to say no to money sometimes. So you then go, oh, okay, well, we've kind of got an actual thing here, a company. If we're going to do this, I want to do it properly. I'm going to take all of the things I've learned from these companies that I've worked in over the last few years that I've decided didn't really fit with my vibe, and let's build a company in my image, and let's try and do something that means we don't end up burned out and in that same position as I had been before. So when you're building a company from scratch, you have this opportunity, a very unique, rare opportunity, to define your culture and your processes completely from scratch. This is not the kind of thing that you can probably go home to work on Monday and say, I saw this talk and we should change everything. It's the kind of thing that you can do from the start, only really. But you can make some of these changes, and hopefully this gives you some inspiration. So there's this saying, and admittedly it's from a management consultant, so I wouldn't read too much into it, but culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I think that's completely true. Ultimately, if you've got a collaborative and engaging culture and a team that is really passionate, you will do great work. And for my company, that's exactly the strategy that we've taken. We want to empower our team to do the best work they possibly can, and hopefully that then pays off as us being renowned for doing good work and for being beacons of that in our space. So I set out 4 guiding principles for my company, and these were the things that we were going to build the company around. It was slightly ambitious, I admit, and these were the things that when I was looking to hire people and take people on board, I was really testing everybody against these 4 criteria to say, does this person actually meet, does this person gel with what we're trying to do here? So the primary focus, number 1 focus, was that community and open source software and contribution would be the absolute core of the company. I realized that was one of the aspects in my previous job and in my personal work that actually I really enjoyed the most. And if there was a way that I could be paid to do that as part of my job, that would be amazing. So I said, we can make these decisions now. We're going to make community and open source a true core value of the company. My view is we can empower the team to contribute how they want, to what they want, and we benefit for it indirectly and directly. People gain knowledge from contributing to open source or from building their own projects. People gain exposure, and your company inadvertently gains exposure as well. So we get our team to go out and speak at conferences and stuff. At no point ever have I asked anyone to say on stage, hey, I'm so-and-so and I work for this company. But just in being visible, actually, this pays off as a kind of marketing strategy in the long run as well. So we gain knowledge, we gain exposure, and I'd say a more engaged and happy team. I've said these things. Personal branding, reputation. My second pillar was a sincere, strong focus on technical quality. Now, everyone in this room, probably developers, saying, hey, we all focus on quality, right? What I realized is the areas where I enjoyed my job the least in the past were where I was being pushed to deliver things under tight timelines, without a real plan, without the ability to say, hey, this is wrong, we're going to have to redo it all later. And so I said, well, if I'm in charge of this company, for as long as I'm in charge of this company, we're going to make sure that everything we do is as good as it can possibly be. And everyone feels comfortable and empowered that they can say, hold on, I need more time to get this right. Not create that pressured environment. It also opens up a good line of communication with your team to make sure that people feel, again, empowered, comfortable to be able to do great work. The third pillar was we were going to be a remote-only company and truly flexible. I'll talk about what that means in a second. But I kind of wanted to travel and do some things whilst also working. I appreciate that's not what everybody wants to do, but my view was, well, if we can set up a company where I'm able to do that, and others are as well, and still keep effective, that would be a really nice thing. Some people want to be able to work late at night. Personally, I'm a night owl. I prefer working from 6 p.m. till 2 a.m., and it's probably where I do my best work. Other people, they get up at the crack of dawn and they work then. So if we can create a company where you can work flexible hours, that would be good as well. We see a lot of job ads at the moment for companies saying, we're a remote company in the office 3 days a week. It's like, it's not a remote company, is it? Like you still got a base, a place you call home. I would argue that hybrid is not remote if you're working 2 days a week from home or 3 days a week from home. I would also even argue that if you've got a physical place that more of your team, the majority of your team meets in, you're not a remote company. You might have remote individuals or remote aspects of your company, but you're not a truly remote company. We don't have an office. We don't get the team together in person at a physical office, but instead, we use that budget that we would have spent on paying for an office and paying rent to get people together in person to do something other than work. We're not standing around a water cooler. We're not in to have meetings to talk about how important company culture is. We do things that actually bring us together as people. And instead, we focus on our actual day-to-day work being done in a remote fashion that is asynchronous and allows people to kind of work as and when and where they feel comfortable. So these are some of our policies that we introduced. Work from anywhere. We have a policy that you can work where you feel most comfortable, and we give all of our new starters a budget to help them set up where they feel most comfortable. If that is an office or a co-working space, that's absolutely fine. We provide you with the budget to do that. But it means that if you prefer to work from the beach and you know that you can get your work done from the beach, yeah, sure, we'll give it a go. Unlimited leave is a slightly controversial one. I know it's got a bit of slack in recent years. We have an unlimited leave policy. My view was if someone doesn't feel motivated to come to work one day, they'd rather be somewhere else, well, they probably aren't going to be very effective at work. And actually, if we could set those boundaries early on and make it clear with people that if you're not feeling right or ready for this, just go take the day off or take a slightly flexible day, work a bit later, a bit earlier, that's fine. Life happens. Ultimately, we're here to live, not to work, so treat people well. And people always ask me, does it get abused and misused? Do people just say, I'm going to take 300 days a year off? And no, it's not happened. There's times when people feel like they might be taking too much or more than they feel they are due. But my view is you treat people like adults, they'll treat you back with the same level of respect. We focus on making sure that expectations are really clear, that deadlines are kind of a shared ownership across the team so that everyone feels like, hey, I'm responsible for working towards this. And yeah, maybe I'm not feeling 100% today, but I'm going to push through on this one day to make sure that we hit that deadline because I know that in 3 weeks' time, I can take a week off and not feel bad about it. So that was kind of the view we set about with the unlimited leave. And the final pillar was minimal ceremony. I said in my previous roles, we were burning hours a week on ceremony. We'd run in 2-week sprints. We'd have a sprint planning meeting on a Friday at the end of the sprint. We'd have a sprint kickoff meeting on a Monday at the start of the sprint. Those would generally take up an hour, maybe more. Sometimes if you're doing planning poker stuff, they could be a couple of hours. You'd have a daily stand-up that, as I mentioned, those would go from being 15 minutes to like 30 to 45 if they're run ineffectively. And you'd also have a cut-off in the sprint where things needed to be delivered and we focus on QA and making sure that all of our sprint items are actually delivered. We've met all of the goals we set out to meet. So what that means is we have got a 2-week sprint and we're maybe getting 5 to 6 actual development days out of it for the whole team. That's firstly very, very costly. Secondly, not what I signed up for. I'm a software engineer. I want to write code and I want to do what I'm good at. So I said, as a general rule, minimal ceremony, within reason. These are the things that we got rid of. Stand-ups, timesheets, meetings, hierarchy, and overtime. Sometimes I get a bit of a shock reaction for some of these points. I'm going to explain each one and explain my rationale behind it. I've complained about stand-ups enough, but stand-ups aren't effective. We decided that if you're just joining a call to say, yeah, no updates from me, that doesn't work. Equally, if we're trying to set this truly remote and flexible culture, being mandated to join a 9 a.m. call every day is not flexible, actually. So instead, we prioritized good, remote, asynchronous communication and updates over daily stand-ups. Similar for meetings. This meeting could have been an email. Everyone has said or heard that phrase in the past. It's very true. Wherever possible, we try to minimize our meetings. And if the meeting is put in, it needs to have a strong agenda, and we set these for either 25 or 55 minutes, leaving a 5-minute gap between meetings. We encourage our team to block out aspects of their day when they don't feel like this would be a very effective time for me to chat, so that we're not booking meetings over when someone would have lunch or when they would do their school run. Again, we want to keep that flexible aspect. I'm not saying we've got rid of meetings entirely, but unnecessary meetings and, yeah. Timesheets. Hands up in here, who has to fill in a timesheet every single day? Yeah, cool. That's kind of expected. A lot of companies do, especially consulting companies. This is how they bill their clients. Unfortunately, having worked on both sides of this, it's not true. If a salesperson has quoted an end customer a fixed amount of money for a project, it doesn't matter how many hours you're logging against it. Equally, if you're logging more or less hours in your day than you're contracted, it's not really affecting anybody either. Timesheets, people always argue, oh, it's important so that we know that our estimates were accurate. Yeah, maybe. But I would also argue that you'll know when your estimate was inaccurate. If you've estimated a 1-hour task as 1 hour, and it takes you 2, big deal. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, and we learn some things. That's not going to break the bank or bankrupt the company. If you've estimated a week-long project and it's taken a month, everyone in the company is painfully aware of that the estimate's wrong. And rather than berating people, making them fill a timesheet in every day and kind of justify the time, instead, people work the hours that they think they need to work to hit these goals, and at the end of a project, we review. If our estimate was wrong, we'll discuss. We'll see what we can learn from that and what we can improve in future. Hierarchy. Being a small-ish company, we decided that unnecessary hierarchy wasn't going to be a thing. We don't have endless levels of manager. We don't have lots of bureaucracy, and we don't have our developers hidden behind, salespeople or account managers, etc. We'd love to put people in front of the people that can actually get things done. So if the most effective thing to do is to put a client and an engineer on a call together and talk about a problem, let's do that, rather than having, it's got to go through the account manager for this project. Finally, overtime. This is a really easy thing to solve, surprisingly, if it's done in the right way. You only need to work overtime when something's gone horribly wrong. You've misunderstood, misquoted, misestimated something. You've miscommunicated or mismanaged expectations of a client or a customer. Or you've screwed up somewhere. It happens. So we have no expectation of overtime. And I'm really happy that in the nearly 10 years we've been running this company, at no point have we ever had to run a pizza party evening to push through a bunch of work and make sure we hit a client deadline. Instead, we focus on good communication. Tell us when you don't think the deadlines that we're making very clear are realistic, and we'll do something about it. We'll tell the customer, we'll manage those expectations, or we'll get someone to come and help and work with you. We don't sell out-of-hours support agreements to any of our customers. We're not doing on-call. We instead prefer good process, making sure we're not doing releases at a critical time. If a customer really does need support out of hours, we agree that ahead of time and discuss with our team, hey, is this something you'd like to support? Here's how much we could pay you for that in addition to your role. It becomes its own thing, not expected over time. So these were my big pillars, my things I wanted to make sure that we were going to do in this new company. Ultimately, the thing that underpins all of these things to make it all possible is great communication. You have to be really, really good at communicating. As I said, we can do that asynchronously as well. This doesn't mean that you need to be constantly talking, but making sure expectations are clear with your team and amongst colleagues is crucial. this is sort of what our team structure roughly looks like. So we have me at the top, the manager, and then we have a development team underneath. In recent years, we've added like front-end UI dev, DevOps type roles as well, and also project and account management or client services roles too, keeping this very, very flat structure. So we have changed this slightly. As I mentioned at the start, I've moved to Australia in the last 9 months, and having spent 10 years working with this same team in the UK, this was going to be a bit of a change. We decided that whilst the team was going to be split across these 2 continents and ultimately a 12-hour time difference or 11-hour time difference at sometimes in the year, we did need a little bit more structure just so that within each country, within the team of the people working in that country, they had a clear reporting hierarchy. So we introduced a lead developer role for the first time. We never had leads or even like manager type titles, and then this sort of project and account manager role where they stepped up a bit more to be more visible to the team, make it clear that that was a line of reporting that they could go and speak to that person if they needed something. But ultimately, it didn't change the structure. This is a very flat structure still, and we aim to keep it this way. Of course, we're a small company. You can see that this is not actually representative of our people. It's purely illustrative, but this couldn't scale, really, to a company with 100 people, I don't believe. But you can do this at a micro level as well. So you can build squads, you can build product teams or project teams where you have a very similar structure. What we've introduced on every single one of our projects is a tech lead role that's different to the lead developer role. This is not someone who has any authority, but it's just giving some ownership, some responsibility to a person in that group of people to say, hey, you're in charge of quality in the technical direction that we take on this project. Give someone a bit of autonomy there. And we found that that's been a really good way of helping spread knowledge around the teams, making sure that we don't have super tight bottlenecks of resources. That tech lead, is not necessarily the person that's going to work on the project the most, or necessarily even knows the most about the project, and we may rotate people around, but it helps build these sort of mini squads within a overall bigger squad, and keeps work a bit interesting. So that's what we've done with the team structure. Okay, the results. Having done this for a while, what have we found? So we get about 80% of our work through reputation. We don't do a big amount of sales or marketing. And our average team retention is above 4 years. These slides were made middle of this year, so it's like 4.5 years now, which is pretty good. Industry average in software is about 18 months retention at most companies. So you could say that the people that we've hired in have made sure that, we're upkeeping our reputation in the community, and that's helping drive sales. And we're keeping people happy. People are sticking around at the company for a while. So there is some positives. We've also learned a whole bunch of stuff. So coming from a very technical background, someone that really likes solving big technical problems, I thought this was great. We were going to set out a company that was going to be hyper-technical, and we were going to just work on these big technical challenges. How cool. Until one of my team turned around to me one day and said, I'm finding this a bit draining. It's a bit tiring working on so many highly technical, very complex projects. Could I have something a bit easier to work on for a while to take a break? And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. If that's what you'd like to do, that's fine. And I realized that I probably need the same. Sometimes you need slightly mundane work, or something that's just internal housekeeping, or keeping the, dealing with some technical debt or a refactor of something. And so we've kind of tried to build some variety into people's workloads to help keep people engaged. We did identify that knowledge and work silos became quite a prevalent thing, particularly when we had multiple projects on, and it would just be easier to schedule a piece of work with the person that knew the most about that project. We've taken an active effort to make sure that when we are scheduling and planning work, we look at, okay, who's the best person to do this, and who's the right person to do this? They are definitely not going to be the same person. The person who's already got way too much on their plate, but knows the project really well, don't give them the project. Give it to someone who we can create a bit of space with this customer. We can make sure that they have time to go and work things out, maybe to work with their colleagues to find a good solution here, but we'll learn a whole bunch from it. Equally, in reverse, you have projects that are like, okay, this is a tight deadline now, and to avoid this big crunch and potential overtime needing to happen, let's move this person off this project onto this other project because we know they are going to be fastest and most effective. We've learned that actually some ceremony is essential. My blanket ban on all ceremony is perhaps a bit too extreme. We found that if we weren't talking at some point in the week, there was still a bit of a disconnect with the team. People were unclear what the team's priorities were and exactly where we were going as a company. So we've introduced one mandatory meeting a week. It's 45 minutes on a Monday morning. It's 9 in the morning till 9:45. And everybody has to join this meeting, no excuses. This includes the team in Australia, which for certain parts of the year, that's about 6 p.m., so it's not an unreasonable time, and the team has accepted that they just adjust their working schedules for the week around that. We have this meeting where we talk about the company's priorities, key goals, give updates from each team and what they've been working on, give an update from a sales perspective, and just talk about bullshit, because you need some time in the week to just talk about bullshit. And we were missing that. So we've brought in this Monday all-hands meeting. We still don't do stand-ups. That's all kept asynchronous. We've learned that actually flexibility is a two-way street and requires compromise and good communication. I thought we were being lovely and being nice and flexible by giving people the ability to just work whenever they want. And for the most part, that's true. But unless you tell us when you're available, sometimes it's quite hard to then schedule work or manage expectations. All of this comes from good communication and managing expectations with people. And if we don't have a clear idea of when someone's going to be available, that becomes challenging. An incident that happened in the last few months was someone said, oh, we're going to book in a launch of a platform for a customer on this certain date. And they went, yeah, fine. And then 2 hours before the launch went, oh, I've got a dentist appointment this afternoon at exactly the time when it's going to launch. It's like, okay, we've been talking about this for a while. And the response that they chirped back at me was, well, the launch wasn't in the calendar, so I didn't know. And I replied, yeah, but your dentist appointment wasn't in the calendar either. It goes both ways. Of course, we managed it, we moved someone onto the project. It was not ideal at such short notice, but having good flexibility comes at a compromise on both parties, ultimately. If it's like, I would really prefer to work and finish at 3 p.m., but I know I have a thing, like a client meeting or something at 3, rather than just saying, no, I won't do that today, you be a bit flexible and you work a bit later. Equally, you can finish up earlier on a Friday if you've decided, oh, I've done my hours for this week. We keep things flexible. Unlimited leave is a complete myth. This is true. I thought I was being nice by saying, let's give everyone unlimited leave, let's let them do whatever they want. The reality is people take less leave. When you have unlimited leave policies, people take less leave. And that's great as a business owner, until you realize people get more burnt out and then start struggling and are not so effective. So instead, we've changed our policy. We still have an unlimited leave policy, but we actually have some guidelines within that now. In the UK, at least, the minimum amount of holiday that you need to take each year is 20 days. So we have an enforced minimum, and we make sure that everyone takes the absolute minimum. As a company, we then have a recommended amount of holiday, which is your minimum plus 75%. So in the UK, that means all of our employees get 7 weeks of leave. I'm talking to a room of Danes, and they're like, oh, what? That's nothing. It's a lot in the UK. That's our recommended limit. And it's not a hard limit, it's not a ceiling. It's just what we're suggesting you should probably take. And then above that, you're more than welcome to take more. All it requires is a conversation. And more than anything, that's to reassure the person asking for the holiday that it's an okay thing to do. To make sure we're thinking about the impact of doing this. It avoids people feeling uncomfortable, like, oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to take that time. Of course you can. There's a process. Just ask for it and we'll discuss it and we'll reassure you that it's fine. Or, if it is a problem, we'll discuss it when it's a problem and not like 6 months down the road when you've got a performance review or a one-to-one with your manager going, hey, you've not really been at work too much. Like, let's manage expectations clearly up front. The final thing I learned was our number one pillar, being open source and community, is really hard if it's not prioritized. If it's not the number one thing on your backlog, your work priorities, it won't be a priority. It just simply won't happen. So a change we've made in recent times is actually treating open source and community work just like as if it was a client. Ultimately, it was what helped drives our sales, and it's what helps push the company forward. So we need to treat it with some level of priority. We have a way when we plan our week to say we're going to put some time aside for a person to work on something for open source. People have the ability to say, oh, I'm going to make sure that we're going to build this thing in a way that can be open source later, or, oh, I'm going to fix this by making a pull request to this project that we use. And they just need to manage the expectations with the team, with the client, that it might take a little bit longer because I'm going to do this, but we're going to do it right. And we're going to do it right up front. So we've shifted a little bit about how we think about open source, and we've literally made a whole work stream in the company where at any given point, someone should be working on something community or open source related. As I mentioned, I moved to Australia. This was not a decision that I just decided one day and went, right, off we go. This took 18 months of preparation and planning, not only from a logistical standpoint, but actually I didn't want to just leave the company in the lurch and be like, I'm off, see ya. It's actually taught me some really interesting things about the team and our structure. Most importantly, the greater distance has actually encouraged greater communication, more knowledge sharing, and probably better boundaries as well. We've decided that it's okay to message anybody in the company at any time of day or night, and it's up to the individuals to manage their notifications and decide when they want to be notified. If you don't want to be notified, just turn your notifications off. If you've decided that the right thing to do is to be available for your team in the hours that make sense for them, then that's great, do that. Maybe some days of the week, but tell your team, hey, on a Friday I don't work, or I work different hours, and I won't be available in that time. It's been really good for setting those expectations. I'm going to talk a bit about some of the tools we use, because we're not doing anything groundbreaking here. We're using standard off-the-shelf type tools. Our workspace, our kind of stack is Google Workspace and Calendar and Google Meet. We use GitHub. We used Trello, and I'll talk a bit about why we got rid of Trello in a moment. And we use Slack. Ultimately, these are our primary communication tools. In Slack, we have an kind of naming convention, if you will, that helps arrange and organize how our projects work. We've made Slack the primary place that you can go to find information or talk to someone that knows the information. At the top here, on the left-hand side, you'll see we've got a bunch of global channels. Announcements is a channel that can only be posted in by some trusted people, and we use that to celebrate our successes, celebrate new starters, new projects going live, and actually cheer on the team. We have a community channel where we talk about all things community and open source, a devs channel, which is where the dev team hangs out. We have an emergencies channel, which is where we have a load of automated alerts that drop into that, and it sets off everyone's Slack notifications if something happens, like a site goes down, or one of our dependent platforms has an incident. We have an estimations channel where, rather than having a daily stand-up where we say, hey, these are the things that need estimating, when someone has a task that needs estimating or they'd like an opinion on an estimation, you pop it in there. You tag someone, and someone should get back to you within, 15 minutes. General is our chitter-chatter channel for, nothing too helpful. We have our team leads channel, which is a locked private channel where the team leads can discuss things. Open source. Random is just memes and GIFs, sales, and then some uptime monitoring stuff. What's most important is we have these groups of channels. So you'll see we have internal dash something, and that's a prefix that we put for any channel that is related to an internal discussion or an internal project. We have project dash something, which is where project teams will hang out and will talk about their specific project. And we also have client dash, where for a few rare cases we actually have our end client in a Slack channel with our wider team. So we have this naming convention, and it makes it really easy to go and find the place to discuss a certain project. We make sure that discussions are kept in a place where it matters. On these project channels, we've used these as kind of a hub, a resource hub for all the places where we think, to link out to all the places where you think you might need to find information. Along the top of a channel in Slack, you're able to put information like who the lead developer is on this project. So in this case, for this project, lead developer is me. And that means when someone comes to a project for the first time, not knowing who to go and talk to or ask for some help, they can say, I'll go reach out to Callum and ask him the questions. If I've not got a response in the channel, you know who you can go and chase or find out why you've not got a response. You can add bookmarks and links to the top of your channels. And this is a great way of making sure that people can find things that they need. For example, the source code repository, the project management boards, or just the URLs for different environments for that project. Our spec folder is generally links off to like big functional specification documents, if there has been one, or off to designs, those sorts of resources. Finally, we encourage people to use Slack regularly and ultimately to keep all of our lines of communication in Slack where possible. For example, my colleague here said the other day, I'm losing my mind. If anyone wants to just chat, let's jump on a Slack huddle. We can also talk about some community CFPs and some other things whilst people are working. Now, this particular person was recently asked to take charge of owning conference submissions in the team and encouraging and soliciting conference submissions in the team. We give people individual responsibilities within our company to make sure that some of our goals are being hit. Maybe if they're not quite related to a client or a project, we'll assign those to an individual. So this is a great way of killing like several birds with one stone. Someone feeling ineffective, just needing a chat, some social water cooler conversation. But also kind of reminding people that, hey, we should also be doing some of these community things, and if you want to take 10 minutes out of your day to come and do that with me, let's do it. And you can see then a Slack huddle happened. So we use Slack a lot as our primary method of communication. I mentioned notifications. As I said, we tell people to turn their notifications off when they decide they don't want to be notified. You can do this in most of the tools that we use. So the Google Workspace allows you to set your working hours. This is great, because if someone goes in and tries to schedule a meeting, it will say, hey, this is outside of this person's working hours. You probably shouldn't do that. And then you can be considerate to it. You can even change and adjust these based on an individual day. So if you decide, hey, this day I'm taking half a day off because I worked a bunch of extra time a few days ago, then it's in the calendar, and people aren't going to schedule things over that time. Gives you this really nice indicator. Similarly, in Slack, you can have your working hours for your notifications set, and you can have this VIP option to allow certain special people to punch through those restrictions and be like, hey, we really do need you for something now. So our team's encouraged to go and set these for their relevant time zone where it matters. You can see, because I'm working with Australia and the UK, my times here are confusingly UK times, but to align with my Australian working hours. So till 10 a.m., for example, UK time on a Friday, but after that, don't contact me. Let's talk a bit about mentorship, because mentorship is actually hard, really hard, at the best of times. And it's something that we try to nail early on when people join the company. We have a onboarding process for the company, which is 3 steps, 3 very important steps. The first one is a welcome. We get the whole team on a call, everyone gets to meet people, and then that person is introduced to the kinds of projects and things that they'll be working on. They get their laptop set up, etc., give an overview of how we work, where things are. That's a half day. They then take half a day off. Onboarding can be draining. It's not the most fun, and you kind of feel a bit useless. So we just keep it really focused, couple of hours, come in, we'll introduce you to our ways of working, and then we'll see you tomorrow. The next day, we have a team onboarding. So if you're a software engineer or a product manager, and you're coming into work on a specific client or a set of clients, we then have a more deep dive, hands-on session with the team you'll be working on, where we go through all the architecture, why we've done things a certain way, some of the technical challenges, some of the work that's coming, and our pipeline. So that really gets someone up to speed and feels like they're actually ready to start working on those projects from day one. And finally, our third half day, is a team lunch. Wherever possible, we will get the team together in person and go out and have lunch. I think there's a really important aspect that's often overlooked in company onboarding, and it's social. You're going to be working with these people a lot. You need to form a bond where you can communicate well and you can feel comfortable. You can feel comfortable calling people out when you don't necessarily agree with their opinions. You can understand the ways people communicate. The only way to do that, I think, is by meeting in person. So despite being a fully remote team, we're still advocates of making sure people get together in person. I complained recently because my team went for one of these onboarding sessions and I got the receipt the bill sent back from the lunch they had, and they hadn't ordered anywhere near enough food, anywhere near enough drinks, and they hadn't enjoyed themselves enough. I was like, come on, it's fine, you could have done more. And then actually the receipt I got a few weeks later was they definitely enjoyed themselves. So there's a few common ways that obviously mentorship happens. One-to-ones is really important, and it's something that I probably neglected for too long when we started the company. It's important to have these regular touch points. The reason I maybe didn't run these as a more formal thing was because I was talking to people on my team basically every day anyway, just in an asynchronous fashion. But the one-to-one is a really important touch point in your working month. We do ours monthly, where you ask someone how they're doing. You don't necessarily talk about work. You ask about, how's life? How's the dog doing? Have you got any holidays planned this year? You joke about some things. These are really important. And where possible, we'll do these in person as well. Or at least for me, quarterly-ish, I'll try and come and meet people in person. It's an opportunity to raise things that people might not feel comfortable raising on a daily basis. It's a way of airing out certain things that might be happening in their personal life that could impact their work, and making sure that myself as a manager can make accommodations to make sure that person feels comfortable and supported and still effective in their job. So one-to-ones are, very important. Remote work when you haven't got a good internet connection is one of the most challenging things that you could do. I'll tell you a little story. We had a colleague who joined the company, and from maybe 6 months in had these awful internet connection issues where they would struggle to join calls, where they would struggle to connect to our databases and to our servers to do any work. They had their front garden at their house dug up to have ultra-fast internet put in, and it was still an issue. Couldn't join calls, and it was incredibly frustrating. This person was a more junior member of our team, and ultimately it meant supporting them in their work was also nearly impossible. You'd have a frustrating call lasting several hours, trying to help them get to the bottom of their problem, not really getting anywhere. Endlessly frustrating. We had the front garden dug up. We replaced the laptop. We were like, it must be the laptop. It's got to be the laptop. Still the same issue. Turns out, and everyone's going to go home that has one of these laptops and check this, Dell XPS has this network prioritization software, ships by default, and if you're on a call and connecting to a database, remote database at the same time, it throttles your connection down to half a meg, and you can't do anything. So we disabled that, and overnight suddenly became problem solved. But I would argue that this took 2 years to get to that point, and probably a lot of damage had been done already by then. This person who was early in their career, who needed that support, needed to be able to learn well, was struggling because they didn't have the support, and we couldn't really give it to them. We'd spent a lot of time working with this person to try and get them up to speed, and it felt like we were kind of starting from zero again 2 years on. So, that's really tough. You need reliable internet connections. Also, controversially, remote work's not for everyone. If you are not a self-starter, a self-problem solver, someone that can at least have a go at something first, jumping on a call at every possible moment to say, hey, I need help with this, is possibly not what you need in a remote setup. That's something I learned the hard way. Actually, the nicer thing to do when that becomes an issue is say, hey, this isn't working out. I think you'd be better off with a team where you can be in the office with people and sitting next to someone and part ways. Pair programming is a very good way of getting people up to speed, but also making sure that people feel like they're learning something. We do pair programming wherever possible on projects. There's companies that claim everything we do is pair programming. It's bullshit. It's not true. I've yet to see a company that every single thing they do is done in a pair programming fashion. But it is a great way of teaching more junior people. Wherever possible, we encourage our teams to get together again in person and work on problems together if they can or if they feel like they need. Some of our teams, they maybe live half an hour down the road from each other. So we as a company will provide them with whatever payment, expenses, reimbursement they need to go and do that, find a nice cafe or a co-working space, sit down, work through those problems together. Because I think at the end of the day, someone's going to learn far more from that than sitting on a frustrating call for several hours. A final point on code reviews. So code reviews are integral to the way we work, and everything we do goes through a code review process. We use GitHub as our place that we do our code reviews. Sometimes code reviews end up descending into a big discussion. And these are not constructive or helpful for anyone. They're not a good use of anybody's time. People going back and forth, kind of arguing in comments on a code review, saying, oh, I disagree with you here, and it's done this way for this reason. We've got a rule. Approximately 3 comments on a code review. If there's anything more, jump on a call. Do a code review on a call. Discuss the problems. You might be overlooking something as the reviewer, and equally, the developer that's worked on the feature might have overlooked something as well. We try to utilize code suggestions in our code reviews. It's very easy to just say, this is wrong, without proving how you would do it as an alternative way. And code suggestions are great because it gives you a way in GitHub where you can just accept the suggestion straight away. It makes a commit, and away you go. Finally, something that we've learned more as we've grown older as a company is documentation is really important. And trying to write up a bit of an explainer about why something's been done a certain way saves a whole bunch of discussion up front. So we really encourage people now to kind of step by step write out what they've done, why they've done it, link off to any code like blog posts or things that they've used as a reference, and provide that evidence. AI tools do a lot of that for you now as well, which is awesome, but then it's not always great. Agreeing an approach to technical work up front is critical. When you've got a remote team where people may not always be available, having a documented approach for how you're going to do something up front means that people don't have to rely on you being available to get an answer to a question. They can make an assumption in line with what's been agreed, and it can be discussed or changed later if necessary, but you don't have people there sat waiting, unclear what they should do. Equally, fantastic for junior developers, where we have a recording of a call or a written document where you've discussed with that person to say, here's how we would approach this project, and this is what we would suggest you do. And we kind of almost meticulously detail. We'll create a class that is called this, and we'll do these things. It's a little bit too detailed, but sometimes it's what's necessary to get someone to deliver things right first time. I've already said that point. Okay, health and well-being. We're going to talk a little bit about health and well-being, and I have to give a disclaimer on this one that I'm not a trained medical professional, I'm not a counselor. This is a sensitive topic, I appreciate that, and these are purely my views and my views only. We're going to talk about a few things like depression, ADHD, and other topics. If that's not comfortable for you, I won't be offended if you decide to leave now. So, I already mentioned at the start my kind of experience with burnout in 2018-19. The pandemic was really tough on everybody, I think. People suddenly being forced into a scary scenario where people don't know necessarily what's going on in the world, let alone their own life, and still being forced to work remotely for a company and try and keep things going more or less normally. For the IT industry at that time, I know in the sort of first 6 to 9 months after the pandemic started, IT industry boomed. There was a load of work available for certain things, taking platforms online, and it was a lot of opportunity. It became quite a stressful time for everybody. A study in 2022 found that 62% of people working in tech consider themselves to be burned out. And within that, 42% considered quitting within 6 months. That's quite scary. And I think it's symptomatic of the fact that people were forced into this environment without making necessarily the relevant accommodations so that people felt comfortable and were still able to work. It was a very stressful time for a lot of people. This stat actually breaks down as being 69% of women working in tech and 56% of men. So it's a 42% average, but significantly skewed towards women working in tech as well, which is a sad thing to say. So we had managers sort of throwing work at people and not really thinking about how do we support these people through this and how do we cope. Ultimately, people were spending a lot more time alone during the pandemic and alone with their own thoughts. And it was a very interesting time coming out of this because of my team, an exact one-third of the company came out of the pandemic identifying as having ADHD qualities or similar. That suddenly presented a new challenge that we now needed to deal with as a company and learn ways of coping with, and that was tough. Here's a study, also from 2022, that says that remote workers are actually less engaged in their work and are getting less satisfaction from their work. They are more stressed, they get angrier, they feel lonelier. And I think this is interesting. It's not my personal lived experience, but it's definitely going to be representative of the wider population where people do like to be in person. And you have to respect that people need human contact and they need to feel supported and enriched in the work that they do. I think as an industry, it's fair to accept that the technology industry has more neurodivergent people in it than others. I think we attract a certain type of person into working in software, and that's great for so many reasons, because I think, you get some amazing talent and people that are able to apply their skills in great ways and finally find a way of expressing themselves, and that's okay. Not everyone works in the same way. People don't necessarily like talking, and they prefer to type. Some people don't like to be on video, and they prefer to just have a voice call. Understanding that and accommodating that's important. But equally, making sure that those people have access to the relevant support networks is important too. In the UK, the NHS has a bunch of guidance and things available for people that have neurodivergent qualities, but it's typically not very good, and it's quite difficult to get advice. So for companies that, like ours, where we want to support our team, we actually enlist the help of a couple of external organizations. One of them is Exceptional Individuals in the UK. These are a charity that's specialized in supporting neurodivergent people, people with ADHD, people with depression, and making sure that they can continue working in the most effective way possible. There's also some great charities around, again in the UK, these ones, but Mind is a great mental health charity with counselling and support available, and we encourage our teams to make use of this if necessary. Finally, this is more of a creative industry thing and not something we do, but there's a thing called NABS, which is a similar service for creative industries, for design and similar roles. Find your equivalent in your country and advocate that you make that available to your team if possible. As I mentioned, a third of my team came out of the pandemic identifying with ADHD qualities. I went online and I looked up what would be defined as ADHD qualities. Impulsiveness, disorganization and struggle with prioritizing things, poor time management, trouble multitasking, restlessness, easily frustrated, mood swings, hot-tempered, and defensiveness. I'm pretty sure everyone in this room can relate to at least a handful of those qualities. This is not to say that we're putting ADHD people in a circle and saying, you have these things. It's a spectrum, and it's something that we all experience to varying degrees. And every single one of these points has different ways of handling it. And ultimately, each individual has different preferred ways that they want to handle this too. This has been a hugely challenging thing for us to work out as a company, to sort of find how we can support these people. Defensiveness is one of the trickiest things I've actually found, because if you ask a question of someone and they are feeling a bit under pressure, they felt like their perception is that their time management has slipped, they'll get very defensive. And it's a purely innocent question that you as a manager might be asking, hey, how are you getting on with that thing? And you're met with this response that was not what you were expecting at all. Again, frustration, mood swings, all comes into this. So learning from individual people how you can best handle them is great. There's been some talks and great articles in recent years about everybody producing their own personal handbook. This is to say, here's how I like to work and here's how I want to be managed, and providing that to your manager. It's not something that we actively do, but it's something that probably you could consider in your team, where you say, hey, I prefer working in this way. And it just makes things a lot easier when you're managing these people. Some of the strategies that we found have worked really well. Having rewarding work and tasks where it feels like you're constantly making progress is super important. Having a big list of tasks, I think we can all maybe associate with this. Having a big list of tasks and feeling like you're getting nowhere just feels demoralizing and like, oh, why am I doing this? Why bother? But if you can say, okay, I've got these 3 things that I need to do with a clear deadline, a clear expectation of when that needs to happen by, this means that you feel like you're actually achieving things. Individual time planning and tracking is quite important. So we encourage people to sort of set their calendar up, their week up the way that they feel like it's going to work best for them, in line with the priorities. So it's more of a discussion. Having some accountability is also important, though. If you give a complete open-ended goal saying, hey, you need to do all of these things by this point, like people sort of trundle along at their own pace, and then they suddenly have a oh shit moment when they're a day away from the deadline and they've not been reminded. So having these regular intervals with key accountability, someone checking in and making sure that we're on track is important. Also, from my perspective as a manager, we know when they're not, and we can handle it rather than increasing the pressure on people. So creating buffer, managing expectation is really where this comes into play. I mentioned we changed our project management tool. So we now use a project management tool called ClickUp, and we previously used Trello. Trello is this list of columns with cards, and we liked it because it was nice and visual, but we've moved to ClickUp because it actually takes that to another level. We have these different statuses in ClickUp that have different colors associated to them, and those colors sort of indicate progress and things are moving along. You get sort of little celebrations when certain things happen. You have a personal to-do list in ClickUp that shows all of the things that are on your plate, and individuals can then manage exactly what they want to be on their plate for their day and reorder priorities, etc. And it keeps things really transparent. But also, I can see other people's to-do lists. So I don't need to constantly check in with someone and find out, hey, how is this going? How are you getting through your list? As long as we've got ClickUp up to date. So we really like this as an approach. And it's something that the team has said, yeah, works really well. A final thing I want to talk about is what actually makes a good manager? This is a really hard question to answer, something I've thought about a lot. And I think it's easier to answer what makes a bad manager. And just by chance, when I was in the airport on the way here, I witnessed what I believe to be a bad manager. I've experienced this firsthand, and I'm sure some of you in the audience have as well. There was somebody on a call in the airport, clearly talking to an engineering team of some sort, berating them. This feature's not working, it's embarrassing, I need it done by Friday, I need answers about why this has happened, I don't care what happens, it needs to be ready by Friday, we shouldn't do anything other than that, but I also want answers and it's embarrassing and I need to update my colleagues on the meeting on Friday and this seems like an awfully stressful environment. It doesn't get anything good out of your team if you work in that way. So what I believe the manager's role to be is about setting focus and direction, being the team's ultimate biggest champion, making sure that they feel rewarded and like they're doing a good job, trying to eliminate resistance and aid their productivity to make sure that they remain effective, but crucially, amongst all of this, ensuring well-being. You shouldn't be so focused on deliverables and making sure that people are hitting deadlines, more on making sure that people feel happy and comfortable and like they're ultimately feeling enriched in the work that they do. But most importantly, I've spoken a lot today about what it means to manage people and help those people stay on track. Something I've personally overlooked a lot is how do you look after yourself as a manager as well. It's not something that is super easy. It's very hard to practice what you preach. I tell people, set boundaries, only work the hours you need to. And I work insane hours, but it's because I choose to and I like what I do. But it's not always the healthiest setup. You have to recognize that ultimately you're leading by example. And if you're trying to build a team after your own image, they will just copy exactly what you do. So what's the word I was going to use? Emulating? That's not a word. Anyway, emitting positivity and all of the things that you're kind of hopeful for in your team and the behaviors you want to see will ultimately lead to your team being more effective, I believe. Crucially, I think you should find peers, other managers. If they're in your company, that's great, but if they're friends working in other companies where you can discuss these problems, managers don't often have that person that they can go and talk to about issues in their day-to-day work that a person working in a team might be able to turn to a teammate. So find your support network and find out who those people are and talk to them on a regular basis to make sure that you feel like you have someone to turn to as well. When someone else can say, hey, that doesn't feel right or fair, and it's only when someone points it out that, hey, you look dead and grey, that you actually realize. Finally, my key takeaways from this. Remote work is hard, it's really hard, and it's not actually suited to everybody. You have to accept that. The safest and kindest thing, if you find that it's not working for you or one of your colleagues, is to say. And if you've tried a few things to work out how you can make it work and it doesn't work, just accept it, move on, everyone will be better for it. Consistent touch points are, despite my ambition of removing all bureaucracy and meetings, consistent touch points are really important and critical for aligning priorities. And culture is ultimately learned starting with leaders, and you need to make sure that all of those qualities are set very clear from day one, hence why we do this Monday call and our regular one-to-ones. Finally, understanding your team's unique attributes and adapting your processes to it will be the enabler to you running a successful team. If you set a process, set a way of working, and insist everyone has to work in that way, you will very quickly meet resistance, and you will get an ineffective team, ultimately. I'm a few minutes over time, but thank you for your time. I'm on social media at all of these platforms, and LinkedIn, it's not on there. I'd love to stick around and chat to you afterwards, but thank you very much for listening.